All right. Well, we're on this thread of the firstborn. We're in, according to my count, part 7. I could be off on that. I don't know, but that's where I count it. And the title of it is that, but the subtitle is God Meant It for Good. And we will pick up the pace as once we get out of Genesis, we'll move a little bit through Exodus, and we'll start picking up the pace because the point is for you to see the connection that goes from creation and this thread, this law of the firstborn, that phrase firstborn, how it is used, because as soon as we hear it, oh, well, that's self-explanatory. It's chronological. First one born. You're going to find out that's not the case. It's not just chronology. It is a phrase meaning status, and it's something given to Israel as a nation who was not the firstborn in anything. And it's a title that Jesus uses in the New Testament. But in order to really understand why Israel's called that, why Jesus is called that, and you have to really work through all of these things that we're working through now. And also to see how God is constantly subverting and overturning the way mankind does things. And that's why by the time you get to the New Testament, Jesus is constantly hammering in the Gospels about the gospel of the kingdom, which, if you've been here for a while, y'all going to get tired of hearing me saying the same things. I understand. It's not because I'm stuck in a loop and don't always remember what I've said. It's because repetition is a good teacher. And so what you have to understand is by the time you get there to the New Testament and try to draw this out, what Jesus is talking about, the gospel of the kingdom, is not say this prayer so when you die you go to heaven. It's so much more than that. The gospel is truly so much more than that. So the reason he says the things he says on the Sermon on the Mount, the reason he says certain phrases, the reason he refers to himself and others refer to him in certain ways, all link back to the Old Testament. And you can just go through the New Testament and go blah, 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 and somebody can have a very basic, minimalist idea of what's being said. I don't want that to happen. I want the people that come to this church to be able to open their Bible and go forward, backwards, front to the, all up and down the middle, peel several layers off the onion to be able to explain things to people, how that the Bible itself works as a one giant pattern, how it's meshed within itself, how it's interwoven. All these ideas, patterns, phrases, all of that, that's what makes the Bible make sense. If it's just open up, if it's just a catechism, this is what it says, now you do it. Go about your lives. Well, that's been tried. It doesn't work. It's still being done, but it doesn't work. All right? So what we want, if we want living, breathing gospelizers, living, breathing people who really have a relationship with the God of the Bible, then we're going to have to really get into who He is. And in a day and age where our young people are constantly confronted with all that's on the internet and YouTube and whatever other kind of apps they have, that's just always hammering the Bible. Those guys, I wish, it aggravates me. When they have one of those people on TV, they never have a Christian that can really refute anything. They always find the weakest no-load, that they can to get on there. They don't ever call William Lane Craig. They never call Michael Heiser to defend this. They don't call, sometimes they can call me, please, just somebody that can go past the bare minimum and sit there and take a beating because they don't know what they're talking about. So we don't, my desire is to have a church full of those folks. To come in here and give you your 3 bullet points, whip you into a frenzy, give you a pep rally, and send you on your way. I have no interest in that at all. And so, if that's what you want, well, I can point you to lots of places around here you can go to for that. We want to dig. I want to dig. I want you to be able to dig. I want you to be able to work through the text on your own without having to listen to that guy or this woman or whomever it is, without having to open up a commentary. All right? Because Lord knows that's just a lot of times as messed up as a football bat, okay? So we're now at the point in our study, if y'all don't know what a football bat is, it doesn't exist, and hence how messed up it is, all right? Try to invent one and you'll see. But we're now at this point in our study, and we got a long way to go in a short time to get there, so I need to hurry up. We're now at this point in our study where Jacob, or Israel, is now up in years, and he has a rather large family. He's got 12 boys. He's got a daughter named Dinah. You know, y'all know she plays a shofar, right? That's Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Get it? That just popped in my head, I promise you. You probably said, yeah, I wish it would have stayed there, yeah. But that's my form of Tourette's, is movie lines and songs. So y'all, those of you who've been here for a while know that. All right, so he's now has this large family, as was promised. He has a lot of land upon which the family in the herds and flocks graze. He's got the things that he's been promised. Those prophecies have been fulfilled to a degree. For him specifically, of course, we know that to Israel, that becomes a national thing later. But right now, as far as he is concerned, Jacob is concerned, he's got what God has promised him. He's wealthy by most standards. He had 2 wives, Rachel and Leah. Rachel he loved. We've talked about that. Leah, not so much. Okay. And then we had all this baby wars. We talked about the status that comes with that from the first wife and who can produce the firstborn son, and all that goes into the thread of the firstborn. So you had, Leah starts popping out babies. Why? God favors her because he knows she's not loved. So God's going to do something for her. That's what he's doing. He's working on her behalf. Rachel gets mad. Blah, 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 blah. She can't have children, so she takes her maid and gives her to Jacob, which was legal. That's surrogacy. They can't run down to the fertility clinic. That happened all the time. You don't ever hear God nuking it or saying it's wrong. That's the way they did it. It's not faith, as our story goes, but it was something very legal and culturally acceptable. And like I said, God doesn't say anything about it in these stories. So she starts giving her maid, and she has children through the maid, but they are attributed to Rachel. However, that maid then becomes a wife, and she has to be treated as such. Well, then Leah eventually gets to a point where she can't have any children, and Rachel's going to start catching up. So what does she do? Here, take my maid. And you've got these baby wars going on. And eventually, to make that long story short, Rachel, Jacob's favorite wife, loved wife, beloved wife, remember it that way. She doesn't have any children until right at the end of the story, all right? She has the last 2 boys, Joseph and Benjamin. And it's important that you realize that as we get into the narrative today, because you're going to see that Joseph was a favorite, all right? Well, there's a reason for that, all right? One is it'll tell you he was the son of his old age, but there's more to it than that, because that boy is the son of the favorite wife, all right? And that figures into the story. So pretend like you're sitting back, you hit the remote, and you're looking at a Netflix series, and we're going to try to cover several episodes today in order to get to pull on this thread of the firstborn. So we've been through all the baby wars and all that, all kinds of chicanery, deceit, trickeration, double dealing, backbiting. We talked about that. Jacob's been promised a blessing, and he's still going to go ahead and do it his way. All right? So we learned about that. So by the time we reach the end of Genesis 35, we get a listing of Jacob's sons. Most people don't care to read genealogies. Once you get King James, all the begets, I don't want to read that. You really need to. Because those bloodlines track through the narrative all the way to the end of the Bible. One of the Joseph's dreams that we'll read about today pops up again in the book of Revelation. I've heard people talk about the book of Revelation and they can't figure out what that particular verse is about. I'm thinking, didn't you read Genesis? No, I'm not linking. You mean I'm supposed to link something in the New Testament to the Old Testament? Yeah, kind of, sort of, yeah. You might ought to want to do that. If that's the way it works. But people don't like to read these genealogies, but we are meant to read these and see the way the family lines work, because the drama you see in one chapter will eventually bring something about in a later chapter, even in a much later book. It even floods into from the Old Testament to the New Testament. So at the end of chapter 35, we see this, that Isaac has passed away. Rachel dies, giving birth to Benjamin, the youngest of Jacob's boys. Leah, we read that Leah gave birth to Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, in that order. Both wives then had sons, as I said, through surrogates. Rachel gave birth to two boys, naturally, we would say, Joseph and Benjamin. They're the youngest, and they're coming along once Jacob was well up in years. But it's important to remember, once again, that they were the sons of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel, because this plays into the story. Once again, if you're reading your Bible, especially the narrative parts, you need to read it as if you were reading fiction. It's not fiction. I didn't say that. Don't go saying he said he doesn't believe it. I believe it, okay? But you read it as if it were fiction. Why? Because subconsciously when you're reading fiction, you're looking for clues. We don't read the Bible that way. We read it flat. And blah, 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 he had a son, blah, 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 skip down, and there's another, and they went over here to this town, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Don't even know where that is. Look it up on a map, blah, blah, blah. And then what you're going to find is all that figures in. It adds to the plot. We're so used to watching stuff on TV where they do all the thinking for you most of the time. Do the thinking for you. No, this is Jewish meditation literature. You're meant to track with and chew on most everything you read here. So, we're going to cover several chapters today with this thread of the firstborn, and it's this one long story of a dysfunctional family. Ever seen one of those? Yeah. If you haven't, get into ministry. But they're all over the place. You see this long story of a dysfunctional family where parental favoritism is evident. We'll also see, once again, that the common cultural assumptions of the day and how God subverts those. And we're given this thread that means in this application, when we get to the end of this section of the narrative, all that we've been coming to, the crescendo, the build-up, the drama, blah, 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 boom, God's going to throw it right there on the screen for us. So please try to remember all that we've covered so far over the last 6 lessons. Y'all got that? Yeah, I know better than that. You slept since then, I know. But you should be grasping the main things. So then you get to chapter 36, and that's a genealogy listing the sons of Esau. You go, well, who cares? It doesn't figure in our story today, but it figures in a way down the line. Even figures in to possibly some prophetic stuff in times, all right? All of that stuff's important. The hatred between those boys, someone argues, still goes on today, all right? So, that lineage is important as you track through the Bible. It has repercussions. So, but we're going to pick up today in 37 with the recording of Joseph's dream. So look at 37 verse 1. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock. All right, so he's a teenager. He's got his driver's license by this time. He's pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. These are the two handmaidens that were given to Jacob. And so he's with his half-brothers there. His father's wives. You see that though they were handmaids, they've been taken as wives. And once again, they're now afforded that protection, and that figures into stories all over the place. And Joseph brought a bad report of them, whom? His brothers, to their father. Okay, so you're getting a little bio here. Now Israel, Jacob, loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him. And look, this is how they say this very nicely. Could not speak peacefully to him. Which means, if you had a big brother, you know what that means. They give you noogies, they sit on your head, and, throw you out of the bed, lock you, they do all that kind of stuff. And that's a nice way of saying they could not speak peacefully to him. But even that can be done in brotherly love. But they just hate him. Now, Joseph had a dream. So you see what's going on here. They give you the setup. Things aren't well between the boys. And now we're going to throw gas on that fire. Look at verse 5. Now Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. And he said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. And they go, oh, that's nice. No, that's not what they do. Look at verse 8. His brother said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? So they interpret the dream straight out of the gate. Or are you indeed to rule over us? Reign and rule. That's important. That will figure in by the time we get to the end of this. So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Verse 9. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, behold, I have dreamed another dream. And they're like, oh boy, here we go again. Behold. Now, if you've been here since the beginning of this study, you studied the meta-narrative, you ought to know is when we start talking about stars, sun, and moon, we're not just talking about planets, okay? All right, if you've been here since we talked about creation, you understand that is spiritual beings, all right? Not angels, a rank above them, okay? What we would call divine counsel. But see how all of this figures in? It's got a little double entendre meaning there. But he says, behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, so now he's kind of being a little more specific, were bowing down to me. What do you think about that? But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? I don't think so, Junior. And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. So, here we go. In the beginning of the chapter, you give them this brief summary of how things were going in Jacob's family. Joseph is Jacob's favorite, daddy's boy, next to the baby, all that good stuff. His father had even given him this multicolored coat, which that was a very extravagant gift in that day, as most people just had a bland, like a croaker sack, we call it, camel hair tunic. All right, you just threw it on, and it was the same color as everybody else's. The only thing that differentiated it was how dirty it was. And your own B.O. That's it. Everybody's wearing the same clothes, all right? But he's given this multicolored, Technicolor dream coat, you've heard it called that. He's given this multicolored coat, and that was an expensive gift. Ooh, well, Junior gets that. The baby boy gets it. The rest of us are wearing, junk. In my day, it would be he's wearing Levi's, and the rest of us are wearing tough skins. That's the cheap blue jeans. That's what we always had with the double knees. So they would last longer and they never faded like Levi's because you wanted the faded ones back in the day. Or the Adidas, the people that did have Adidas back then, the leather Stan Smiths. I never had any of those. We had whatever the cheapest was. Yeah, Keds, which are like Dexters now. People like them. Back in the day, nobody wanted those. That was the ghetto shoes, you didn't want that. All right. So everybody else has got the Keds. Joseph gets the Stan Smiths, all right, or what have you. So he goes and he reveals these two dreams to them. And you remember it, and you've got to understand that straight out of the gate, they know what this means, that we're going to bow to you. And then you see how irate they are because that's not going to happen. Well, y'all ought to know why that's not supposed to happen. He's the 11th out of 12. The father never bows down to the son. That doesn't happen. And everybody else is going to have to take the lead of the firstborn son. That's the way it works. However, what pattern have we established ever since creation? Is that God most oftentimes uses the latecomer, the secondborn, thirdborn, somewhere down the line, someone late to the party, someone who's not supposed to be the one with the right to rule. God chooses them over the conventions of man in order to accomplish his plan. So we can see how angry everybody got when Joseph tells the dreams. Because God, once again, has chosen a latecomer, a younger, much younger son through whom he's going to work explicitly. Reuben should be the one, being he's the oldest, but once again, that isn't to be. So as the story continues, I'm going to try to cover a bunch of ground right here. Joseph is then sent to, they give you all this background, okay? That's what they're doing. Everybody hates him, the brothers hate him, daddy loves him, blah, blah, blah. The brothers want to kill him, and that's in the background of the first 5 minutes of the episode. And then guess what? His daddy says, go check on your brothers. So he's sent to check on all these older brothers who are several miles, if you look at a map, they're several miles away from home to the north, tending to the flocks and herds, because that's what you do. You have to move the flocks around to graze on the land. And then the older boys see him coming, and they begin to hatch this plan. And someone goes, there's that little punk wearing his coat and his Stan Smiths. Look at him. He thinks he's something. Sporting out here like a little rooster. Daddy sent him to check up on us. We know he's already sent back home and told Daddy that the other boys were goofing off. He's going to do the same thing to us. So, let's kill him. Pretty, direct. That's far to go. I didn't have an older brother. I know many people did. You didn't want to necessarily kill him. You wanted to beat him up a lot, but you didn't want to kill him. So they go, let's kill him. And so they hatch this plan, and let's kill him. But then Reuben, the oldest, says, no. Let's don't do that. Let's just throw him into this pit. And so Reuben's plan was, if you read through, that he's going to throw him in the pit, and later he'll come back and get him out and say, now get back home to Daddy and just keep your mouth shut. That's what he wanted to happen. But that doesn't happen. Because apparently, if you read, Reuben steps away. I don't know what he's doing. He's checking on the flocks. I don't know if he's calling nature. I don't know what happens. But he's gone. And then these Ishmaelites, which are distant cousins, they're coming from Gilead, which is east of the Sea of Galilee, over in modern Jordan. All right? They're coming through on that trade route, and then they're going to head south. Once they get toward the coast, they're going to head south to Egypt. And they go, hey, look at those guys. They got a caravan. I know what we can do. Let's don't kill him. Let's sell him. We might as well make some money out of this. What will it profit us to kill him? Okay. So they sell him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Reuben comes back. He looks in the hole. Joseph's gone. Where's the boy? We saw an opportunity. A business opportunity. So we sold the little punk into slavery. And we got 20 shekels. If you don't like it, we'll keep your share. And so all that happens, and then they got to figure, well, what are we going to tell Daddy? So they'd already taken his coat off of him. They kill a goat or something because they're going to eat. They dip it in blood, and you know the story. They wind up going back home and say, look, Daddy, I'm sorry, we found his coat. The monster ate him. And this is all we found. He left this very expensive coat that you won't buy for any of the rest of us. That's all we found. So you know that. It's a story. Right? So Joseph is sold down in Egypt. He is bought by Potiphar, who was a man high up in the government. And eventually Joseph begins to run his household. He takes care of all of the business. He makes sure he's the straw boss. Everybody's doing what they're told to do. Make sure the bills are paid. All the groceries are gotten in. He's running this thing, doing some investing for him on the side in the Egyptian stock market. He's got all this stuff going on, and he's doing well. Becomes his trusted servant. And everything's groovy until Potiphar's wife shows up one day and says, that's a good-looking young man. He said, hey. He's like, get back. I don't need this drama. And he rebuffs her, and she, get away with that. So she goes tells up, that boy's been stalking me around the house, and he shot me a line. And so Potiphar says, I'm not going to have this. And he throws Joseph in jail through no fault of his own. Then you see that he eventually gets out of prison because God gives him the ability to interpret dreams. So he's in the prison. There are two other guys in the prison. They have these dreams, and Joseph interprets them. He interprets the first one. And so he says, in 3 days, the king's going to put you back to work. Oh, yeah. And the other guy goes, hey, interpret my dream. He's like, okay, yeah, this In 3 days? Yeah. In 3 days, you're going to die. Yeah, and so I'm sure the guy's like, look at this again, maybe. But everything that Joseph says comes true. All right? So eventually, Pharaoh has these dreams. And he goes to all his soothsayers and his priests, and they can't interpret the dreams. Where he said, you tell me, there's like, well, tell us a dream. Like, no, you tell me what the dream is. You go, they get into all this. And finally, that cupbearer, who's the one that the Pharaoh rehired and took out of prison, he goes, wait a minute, I know this Hebrew guy in prison. We were buddies in prison. That's not always the best job description or best job recommendation you give somebody. Because this guy's in prison with, he interprets dreams. Oh, really? Yeah, we'll bring him up here. So he interprets the dream, and the dream is essentially that, look, there are going to be 7 good years of plenty, and there's going to be 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh goes, you know what? That's it. You got the job. And so Joseph goes from being in prison to what we call the vizier, meaning he's second in charge of all of Egypt, which is the most powerful country in the ancient Near East at the time. And so, once again, y'all know the story. Joseph begins to administrate over Egypt, and he knows the famine's coming, so they start storing all the grain. I mean, they're pouring the fertilizer to it. They're just storing everything. Might even been rationing a little bit, to keep some extra on hand. And then after those 7 years of stockpiling, the famine hits. And then Joseph, I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, Joseph, what he does, everybody like, oh, this is so good. Maybe I will get into it. Government took care of them. You haven't read the story. Because Joseph, he's working for the government. What Joseph does is then turns around and sells that grain right back to the Egyptians. He took the grain from the Egyptians, and then he sells it back to the Egyptians. So if that's what you want the government to do, then I guess this is a good example of how to do it. But if I don't think that's the way it should work. But nonetheless, that's the way it did, and their government was very vastly different than anything we got today. The point I'm trying to make is, he is making Pharaoh a lot of money. All right? And because the famine has spread outside of Egypt, then foreigners, as we'll see, are also coming in. Foreign kings would be buying government. And they're paying up, and they're paying up. And the Pharaoh's, his bank account's just steadily increasing. So the Pharaoh, Joseph is a good guy. I'm glad he got out of prison. So all that's going on, and this famine affects Canaan, and eventually Jacob has to do something, or his family's going to starve. So word has it that there's, of course, there's grain in Egypt. So Jacob sends his boys down there in order to buy grain. Does that scenario ring any bells? It should. Have we ever read about there being a famine and the main character in our story going to Egypt because of that famine? All right. Well, you know what that means? That means it's a doublet. So we're meant to go back to those stories, see what the similarity in the stories brings the stories together, but then what's different. So it would behoove you to go down that rabbit trail and check all that out. So look at chapter 42. Now we got a lot of reading to do. Chapter 42, verse 1. Well, we got to hurry. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, this is funny, why y'all look at one another? Y'all just going to stand around here and starve? I mean, that's what he's saying. Why do y'all look at one another? And he said, behold, I've heard that there's grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. 10. Why? Because number 11 ain't there. He's already in Egypt. And number 12 is the baby, and they're not letting him go anywhere. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, which shows you they're coming from all around, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and Yep. And bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. And Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. Now I can see this. Oh, look at who they are. And they bow, and he's like, I told you, didn't I? I told you. All you had to do was listen. You know how I had those dreams? You know who gave me those dreams? God gave me those dreams. But y'all wouldn't listen because you're a bunch of knuckleheads. And guess what? Now you're starving, and I got all the food. So I'm sure some of that's running through his head. All right. So but he doesn't let on that he recognizes them. He says, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. And he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We're all sons of one man. We're honest men." And he's thinking, yeah, are you sure you are? "Your servants have never been spies." And he said to them, "No, it is the nakedness of the land that you've come to see." And they said, "No, we, your servants, are 12 brothers." "Oh, really? 12, you think? Maybe 11? But this is, I think Joseph's having some fun. He's having some fun here. "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one, is no more." And Joseph, you don't say. But Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you are spies, and by this you shall be tested." Key word, test, okay? "By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you." Now the test is going to change. Right now send one of you, meaning one's going back to Canaan, and we'll keep the other 9 here. All right, now that'll switch here in a second. "But send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there's truth in you. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. So they're locked up. So I want you to see what's happening here. Once again, in verse 6, you see that his brothers bowed to him. So you got some fulfillment going on there. All right. And even though they didn't know it was him. But then I want you to see the conversation. That's what you're meant to see here. And how I keep saying Jacob, how Joseph plays things. Because he can obviously understand them because they speak the same language. However, what you're about to read is that Joseph was working through an interpreter. He hears what they're saying amongst themselves, but he's still got the interpreter going. So they don't know he speaks Hebrew. All right. So, in all of this, is through all of this that he begins to tease out the details regarding the health of his father and his brother Benjamin. All right? Because he and Benjamin are tight. They're the 2 baby boys. They share the same mother. So he wants to know, one, he's going to get to how you've got a father, how is he, and how is your little brother? And the other brothers aren't putting this together. They're just scared. We're going to jail. We're in a foreign country. They think we're spies. There's no constitutional protection here. This ain't going to happen. This is bad. All right? So he just hatches this plan to test them. And it's this test that you're now meant to see as you work through the next several chapters. And you should be thinking, why is he testing them? And for that, you need to go back a few chapters. So look at chapter 42, verse 18. "On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, 'Do this and you will live, for I fear God.'" Elohim there. "If you are honest men, let one of you," now he said, "let one of you remain." He was saying send one home. Now he's saying one must stay and the rest can go home. "Let one of your brothers remain confined when you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified and you shall not die." And they did so. So the brother that stays back, which will be Simeon, is collateral. You got to if you got to bring the youngest brother back to get the older brother back. And so what is he doing? He's thinking, have they changed at all? Have they repented at all? Are they willing to still leave a brother behind to whatever is going to happen for their own benefit? All right? So that's the plan, is to do this. Will they betray one of their brothers to save themselves? Have they changed at all? And then we get their thoughts because they're speaking among themselves. Look at verse 21. Then they said to one another, this is them talking once again. Now listen, read this. In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. And that's why this distress has come upon us. We did bad, we're getting bad. That's their theology. And Reuben answered them, did I not tell you? Now he speaks up. Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. And now look at, here we are, starving to death in a foreign land, been in jail for 3 days, and one of us is going to have to stay for a while longer. Are y'all happy? This is what's going on, blah, 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 between all of them. All right. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away, Joseph does, and he wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them, and he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes, because you got to have that impact, seeing your brother thrown in jail in a foreign country. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack and give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Now, isn't that interesting? Because he gives them back all their money plus provisions for the journey home. So they're not eating out of what they supposedly bought. All right? So he's testing them, but he's also taking care of them at the same time. Free food. Or however long that grain lasts. Free food. But it's the blessing of the free food and the provisions that scares them. That's brilliant. If you're a brother trying to torture your other brothers, that's brilliant. I'll take care of them and scare them to death in the process. I got all the bases covered. And he goes back and he can just walk in the jail anytime and look at Simeon and go, yeah. I see. You see? Look at verse 26. So now the brothers are leaving town, headed back to Canaan. It says, then they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And as only one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place. So they stop at the rest area to gas up, which means feed the donkey something. He saw his money in the mouth of his sack. Uh-oh. And he said to his brothers, my money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack. And at this, their hearts failed them. Which is me. Y'all ever had that happen where all of a sudden you feel your heart almost stop? I had that happen before. All right. I'm not going to tell you how it happened, but it wasn't fun. All right. So their hearts failed them. And they turned trembling to one another saying, what is this that God has done to us? All right, what's going on? This is a whacked out thing that comes after years of the guilt they've been carrying. So one of them finds the money. Keep reading. They're scared. And when they came to Jacob, their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, and you could just say he told him everything, but the Hebrews are going to give you every detail, right? So the Lord of the land spoke roughly to us, Dad, and because we're missing a brother. And they showed back up all his money. You knuckleheads, explain yourself. He spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, we're honest men. We have never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take grain for the famine of your households and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I shall know that you are not spies but honest men. And I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. And as they emptied their sacks, behold. All right, now look what happens. Every man's bundle of money was in his sack. That can't be an oversight. Something's happening here. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. Why? We've just ripped off the biggest superpower in the area, and they already think we're spies, and one brother's still there in jail. There's no way to get out of this, you see. I mean, they're terrified. You ripped off the superpower. All right, so look at this. And then look what their father said to them, verse 36. Jacob, the father, said to them, "You have bereaved me of my children." Bereaved is a nice word there. "Joseph is no more. He's gone. And Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin. And all this has come against me. And what's inferred is it's all on me because of you knuckleheads that need to be kicked in the tail." Once again, you can just see the father pacing up and down and the boys standing there all hangdog. And is what in the world, I cannot believe you come from my loins. That's what they're thinking there. Where did all the brains go? The Lord was giving out brains. You thought he said rain and ran away. I don't know. All this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, it's a very rash thing to do here, but he says, "Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you." That plays a part. Those rash type of things play parts later in different parts of the narrative. "But if I do not bring him back to you, put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." Now Reuben's the oldest. He should be taking charge. But he said, Jacob says, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead." And listen to this, he's the only one left. And the other 10 are like, "Good grief. We don't even count. He's been blessing us out for the last hour and a half, and he doesn't even care about us." You're meant to see that. This is dysfunctional. This is not good parenting. If harm, the next verse, "If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol," which means it's going to kill me. So now all of them find their money. And on top of all the anxiety caused by finding that money, they're having to explain all this to their father, where their brother Simeon is. And that's when Jacob pulls a Fred Sanford. They tell him all this, and he's like, "Elizabeth, I'm coming to you." Fred Sanford had 11 heart attacks a year. And that's what Jacob is doing here. And it's all because his knucklehead, y'all couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag. I don't know. That's what's going. You're meant to see that. But eventually they have to go back for more grain. Look at chapter 43. "Now the famine was severe in the land. And when they had eaten the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, 'Go again and buy us a little food.' But Judah said to him, 'But the man solemnly warned us, saying, You shall not see my face,'" meaning you can't buy any food, "'unless your brother is with you. If you will not send our brother with us, we'll go down. If you will send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we're not going down there. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" We're not going. If you don't send Benjamin with us, we're not going. They've forgotten about Simeon. He's still down there in the Egyptian prison making little rocks out of big rocks. Or picking up trash on the side of the highway in cool hand loot, with a sling blade on the side of the road. They've forgotten about him. We need to go down. It should be, yes, send him and we'll go get our brother. Nope. Simeon's not even mentioned. He said, if you don't see your brother, you're not getting any food. Verse 6, "Israel said, Jacob, why did you treat me so badly as to even tell the man that you had another brother?" And they replied, "He questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, 'Is your father still alive?'" And why would he ask that? Well, we know why Joseph asked the question, because he wants to know. But they don't know that. "Do you have another brother?" Why would he ask that question? How does he know that? Because Joseph's got a plan here. This is what's going on. But they don't know that. "What we told him was an answer to the question." We just answered the questions, Dad. We're trembling. We're going to jail in a foreign land. No lawyer, no bail money. We're going to jail. So we just told him what he wanted to know. So could we in any way know what he would say? Bring your brother down? And Judah said to Israel his father, send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. I'll stand in collateral. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. I'll take the heat. And then he says this, he gets in this jab. Listen, old man, if we had not delayed, we would have now been there and back twice while you're sitting around pounding sand. All right, so they head back to Egypt. So you see, once again, you get all this drama that's going on. This is meant to crescendo you towards the end of the Netflix series here. And so verse 16 says, they get back down to Egypt. Verse 16 says, when Joseph saw Benjamin with him, he said to the steward of his house, bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men, or his brothers, were afraid, because now they just came back and they're being invited to the White House. After they went home with all that money and didn't come back to pay it yet. And they're terrified. They're terrified. And Joseph is making the most of this. He knows their knees are knocking. Yeah, you just see this guy. Why? Are you going to have dinner with him? Really? He remembers us? Yeah, as soon as he saw you, he wants you to come on in. This is a mafia hit. Isn't it? In the mafia movies, before they kill you, they're nice to you. Come on, we're going for a ride. Yeah, and there's always a guy sitting behind you. You don't want a guy sitting behind you. Tap or just a garrote, They think everything is groovy until you're dead. And so that's what they think is going. They've seen The Godfather. They know that's what they think is going on here. So they did as Joseph told them, brought the men into Joseph's house. The men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, is it because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys? That's what they're scared of. They think, it's because of the money. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door and said, hey man, why is he inviting us? Is it because of the money and we're going to lose our donkeys and we're going to get a beating and go to prison? He might kill us dead and all this, And so that's what they're asking him. And he said, oh my Lord, we came down the first time. This is let me start over verse 19. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, oh my Lord, we came down the first time to buy food. And when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks. And there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we brought it back again with us. And we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks. And then the guy says, peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. And that's interesting that he says it that way, because Joseph ordered it done. Does that mean Joseph is God? No. What that means, and the way they write, is that it was God's providence and God is working through your son Joseph. That's what it means. And they understand that. And so now you start getting a hint of this story is about God working, even though it's going all around. You had to get to your elbow go around your elbow to get to your armpit to get to this part of the story. But that's what you are meant to see in that statement. This has something to do with God working despite all these circumstances and all this drama. Okay? So he's replied, peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your fathers put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, when they had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they should eat bread there. And the present was, Jacob said, take back the money, from the last trip, take more money, and then he had a bunch of fruits and stuff from the area, take all this back as a gift to them. So they're doing that, and that's worth a lot of money, okay? It's not like they stopped at Winn-Dixie and got like a fruit basket. No. This is donkeys full of dates and grapes or whatever they got, they're carrying them back. So then you get verse 26. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them, and they bowed down to him to the ground. And he inquired about their welfare and said, is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? And they said, your servant, our father, is well. He's still alive. And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves, which means they went all the way to the ground, put their nose on the, here we go. Fulfillment again, And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son. You see how it's worded? They're all brothers, but that's his mother's son. There's an extra tie there. And said, is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son. Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out. And controlling himself, he said, serve the food. And they served him by himself, because he's the big dog, and them by themselves, the brothers, and the Egyptians, the other servants, who ate with him by themselves. Because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. All right, so you got some stuff going on there. And they sat before him, the firstborn, and listen to the seating order, because that actually go all the way to the New Testament to the Last Supper, and you can see this playing into that also. They sat before him, the firstborn, according to what? His birthright. So the law of firstborn comes into this also. According to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Why? Look at, portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. So everybody eats good, but Benjamin eats 5 times as good. They're eating in the house of a king. This is not the meal you get camped out on the side of a mountain somewhere back in Canaan. This is the bee's knees. All right, this is the best you can get. Then chapter 44, verse 1. Keep going. Then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and put each and we're still not through with this test. Put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, that's high dollar stuff there, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. And as soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys, and they had only gone a short distance from the city. Now Joseph said to his steward, up, follow after the men. When you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is it not from this cup, meaning that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? It doesn't mean that Joseph actually did that, but that's what would have been expected from an Egyptian vizier. You have done evil in doing this. So that's what he's supposed to say when he catches them. So verse 6, when he overtook them, he spoke to them these words. And they said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Now you got to understand the terror. They just ate. And everything is groovy. And then they spent the night somewhere. They ate. They eat at noon. But they're caught the next morning or whatever. So, I don't know. Maybe put them up in a Holiday Inn. I don't know. But they did. So they headed back in. Everything is groovy. We're going back home. Food got all our brothers. Blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you hear, uh-oh. This guy and some soldiers show up. What are y'all doing stealing? What, on the time out? No, what, no. And you're like, not again. This is deja vu all over again, right? What are we doing? And then he comes up and accuses them of this. And they're like, no. The money that we found in the mouth of our sacks, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever, and here we go. We know we didn't do it. And here comes another rash oath. And don't do this. Just don't do this. Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die. Okay? And we also will be my Lord's servants. So you can kill whoever had it, and the rest of us will go back and be slaves. That's how innocent we are. Hide and watch. And he said, let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent. All right, I won't even take the rest of you back for slaves, but whoever found the cup with. So then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack. And he searched, beginning with the oldest, because that's how you get the drama. Because he knows the youngest one's got the cup. So we're going to drag this out. Start with the oldest, and he's like, and you know, Reuben is sitting there like, gosh, I hope it's not my bag. It's not. I know I didn't do it. Whew. Yeah, I'm good. And then the next one, Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah, you keep working your way down. And there's Benjamin. They're like, I told you guys. They're like, yeah, we know. I don't know what this guy's problem is. And all of a sudden he opens the sack and cling, there's a goblet. Uh-oh. And it's Benjamin, for goodness sakes. And so there you have it. So then each man, he quickly lowered his sack, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Verse 13, and they tore their clothes, because that's what you do in that day when you're going crazy. They tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. We're going to jail. Here we go. And they're looking at Benjamin. They're right. What were you thinking? And Benjamin's like, I don't know. I didn't do that. I don't, yeah. Aren't you daddy's second favorite? And here you are now causing more trouble. All of that is going on the journey back into town. So then you got verse 14. They're going back into town, probably under this armed escort. And when Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, because he knows the plan. And they fell before him to the ground. And Joseph said to them, I'm going to have some fun with this. What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? And Judah said, which could infer that that's how he knows they had it or something. And Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out. Here we go. And this is the test. Because remember, the test is, have the boys changed? Not only, I want to know how my brother and my father are doing. Have y'all changed? Are y'all any different from the guys that threw me into a pit years ago? 16? Is that where I am? I got to find 16. All right. And Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. All right, here we go. Put screws on them. They start confessing. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and also in whose hand the cup has been found, Benjamin. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. He's not going to kill him. But as for you, go up into your father in peace. I'll keep Benjamin. And then Judah went up. Now, here we go. Because Judah, you got to think back early in the story. Judah wants him dead. All of this is bad. So now you see Judah, who plays the bad guy early in the story. Now you see him step up. Does Judah have any significance? Whether you know it or not thus far. Jesus comes through Judah. That's important, okay? So now Judah stands up. He goes up to him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. Please don't kill me, but can I speak? That's what he said. My Lord asked his servant, saying, and now we're going to this whole story again. Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone, you see how his brother, not our brother, his brother, meaning they're tied to the same mother. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Did you say to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him? And we said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, us, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. And when we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother goes with us, then we'll go down, for we cannot see the man's face in order to buy grain, unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that what my wife bore me 2 sons. Favorite wife, Rachel. One left me, being Joseph, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I've never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs and evil to Sheol. It'll kill me. Now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, meaning if I leave him here, then as his life is bound up in this boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant, being me, Judah says, became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father. And see, that says something to Joseph. That Judah's willing to stand up for the life of the younger brother, which he wasn't willing to do when they threw Joseph in the pit. So Joseph's getting the idea the boys have changed, okay? If I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy, meaning Judah says, I'll stay and be your servant, instead of the little Benjamin, as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, and he says, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept out loud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence, because this has been one heck of a ride. And they're just standing there. No. He's, See, now, what you're meant to see now is this dysfunctional family is being brought back together. It's becoming functional. And it's becoming functional because those brothers that did not do the right thing, they were envious, are now stepping up to the plate and doing what the older brothers should do. So, Genesis 45:4. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now this is important. This is what you're supposed to see. This is what splashed up on the screen after all of these episodes. Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. That's meant to be the kicker. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. You see how he's saying that? At some point in his life, he's come to that revelation. And he's accepted it and he's living it. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt and of all that you've seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that his brothers talked with him. And then when the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, Joseph's brothers have come. It pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt. And you shall eat the fat of the land. And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Have no concern for your goods, For the rest of all the land of Egypt is yours. So take the motorcade and go get them. Now, I hope you see what is happening here. There you have it. A true, we're running late. Y'all are not going to beat the Baptists to the buffet today. I'm sorry. But I'll wrap this up very quickly. And there you have it, because you got this truly dysfunctional family that's hit the big time. This is one of those Horatio Alger stories here. They've been reunited. They're going to live in a land where there's plenty of food. And on top of that, they live in one of the most fertile areas of the country. And their brother's going to set them up there. But where did we start? Okay, we started with the 11th of 12 sons claiming that his family would bow down to him, and they did. Daddy's favorite, yet the most despised by his brothers, seen as arrogant and a tattletale, who's sold into slavery and then sent to prison, who's released and then made vizier of the most powerful country in the ancient Near East at the time. But there's much more to it than that. Why all the testing of his brothers? Why would you drag them out through this? Well, one is the purpose of the story. He's not just being mean. All right, he's not just going, I got you. There's more. He wants to know what they're like. Because what you see is, through all this, Joseph's gotten a revelation that this is God's plan. And he's kind of figured out what's going on and where this thing should end. And the famine is the vehicle that does all of this. Now, God could have just said, there will be no famine in Canaan. But that creates other problems, because if you got a famine in Egypt and there's no famine in Canaan, you know what Egypt's going to do? They're going to run over to Canaan and take all the food because they got the army. Canaan's just a bunch of little city-states. There's nothing organized there. All of this is going on, but God is going this vast route to provide for his people during the last 5 years of this famine, and over the course of the next few hundred years, he's nation building, because in order that they will be able to come out of Egypt and do what he has planned for them when they re-enter Canaan. That's a lot of logistics. You got to understand. So you got all this that's going on with Joseph, but there's much more than that, because he's testing his brothers, and I don't think he was being mean. He wanted to see if his brothers had changed at all, and they had. Because Reuben and Judah stepped up to the plate when they needed to do so. Judah is especially important in here. Do you remember when we were talking about Esau and Jacob? 2 nations in the womb? All right. You're not supposed to forget that. Esau doesn't just drop out of the story. The first was, we talked about in those stories, there's 2 blessings to be had. All right. The first one was the birthright. That's the Bechara. All right. And that's the one that Esau gives up for a bowl of stew. All right, he forfeited that. Very flippant about it. But then you have something else that Jacob and his mother cheat him out of. That's the Berakah, which is the blessing of ruling and multiplication, which is tied in with the lineage of Jesus and this snake crusher that's prophesied about in Genesis 3. So as you make your way through the Old Testament, you're going to see that Judah is the one from whom the Messiah comes. That's the Berakah. All right? Judah still gets that blessing. He's got to for the story to work out, okay? But Joseph's lineage, Joseph has 2 boys, Ephraim and Manasseh. All right? And what you see is they are the largest tribes. That's the Berakah. He gets that because that's the blessing of multiplication and all this kind of stuff. And then guess what happens? You ever heard about Israel later splits into 2 nations? All right? Who rules the southern kingdom? Judah. Who rules the northern kingdom? They're known as Ephraim. It's Joseph's line that runs that, and they're forever at each other's throats. These stories figure in all that stuff way back. But if you just read, that's 8 months ago I read about that. I've forgotten about it. Well, it's my job to bring it and make it known to you. All right? So they're constantly fighting for power. Later, Ezekiel prophesies this in 37:15. Do we have that, Hazelnut? It says, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take a stick and write on it for Judah and the people of Israel associated with him. Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, name of one of his boys. and all the house of Israel associated with him, and then join them one to another into one stick, that they may become one in your hand. And when your people say to you, will you not tell us what you mean by these? Say to them, thus says the Lord God, behold, I am about to take the stick of Joseph, that is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel associated with him. I will join it with the stick of Judah and make them one stick, that they may be one in my hand. So one day they're going to be reunited again. And you can go down a lot of rabbit trails there. But there's even more. What should we take away from, I'm not getting in the prophecy into this. What should we take away from all this is something that's been building for some time. Look at Genesis 45:4. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. I'm bringing you here for the last 5 years of the harvest. Of the famine. And on through. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, to keep alive for you many survivors. Why? Because he's got to build a nation. Israel is his people. Hang on to that line right there. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. So it's through all this drama that everyone would be blessed, and that's what you got to see. Because, yes, Joseph, the 11th of 12 boys, was the one chosen by God. That's why God gave him the dreams. Yet this was all against all the social convention and custom. Yes, Joseph was arrogant about it. He's a kid. Yeah, he was a tattletale. He's a kid. Yes, his brothers hated him. Yeah, because they're brothers. All right. Yes, Joseph's life is one of ups and downs. Yes, his brothers were tested and had to deal with a great deal of stress, as did their father. But in the end, here's what you got to see. Because you got to link this to all the other threads, the same thread, all the stories we've been talking about. But in the end, it was the chosen one, the chosen son, through whom all the others were blessed. That's a major biblical theme. That's the major thing we're meant to see here. It is a main theme as you pull on this thread of the firstborn, because God has enough blessing to go around. There's no need to panic or get stupid when someone else is blessed above us. That's why Cain killed Abel. He blessed Abel. There's not enough for me. So I'll kiss him and I'll kill him. That comes later. I'll kill him, and then I'll get the blessing. You see what's going on here? What do we have in creation? The serpent comes down. He's one of those starry beings created on day 4. And he's mad because the humans, the latecomers, get around the rule. No, so he tricks them into faulting it. Then later we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. God chooses Shem. What does Ham do? He does something real stupid. Why? To try to elevate himself to be the alpha male. In all of these stories, it's God choosing someone, and someone that's not chosen then trying to get what was not given to them and getting mad about it, coveting that, and through some kinds of trickeration trying to get it for themselves. Or, in Jacob's case, it's one that God's told his mother from the beginning, he'll be blessed, the older will serve the younger. Yet, even though that's been said, Jacob spends his entire life trying to get it himself through his own means. And what you see is in every one of those cases, the one that was blessed, if the other one had just hung on, they would have been blessed through them. And so now, because of this famine, the brothers that hated their little brother are now going to be blessed through the younger brother that was chosen. If they had just gone along with it, and you wouldn't have had all this drama, and everybody's still blessed. So what did Gentiles do when they get mad? Why did God choose them? Why did God choose Israel? It doesn't stinking matter. You know why? Because what does the word say? It's through Israel that all the world will be blessed. And now we're all sitting here today, thousands of years later on the other side of the world, most of us as Gentiles, being blessed through Jesus because he chose Israel out of all of those nations way back in the early part of Genesis to bless the entire world. Do you see how the thing works? And do you see how that on the personal level, then when we're working with someone, I go home and tell the wife, I got this promotion wrapped up, and you go in the next day and they give it to this guy, and he's a total moron. Okay, that happens all the time. He probably thinks you're a moron, and that's why you didn't get it. But the point is, all right, they got it. What do I do with that? Is God in charge? Yes, I believe He is. Then if God wanted me to have the promotion, I certainly could have gotten it. I don't care what kind of stuff went on. I don't care if it's racism. I don't care if somebody pays somebody off. I don't care. It doesn't matter. God is in charge of my life. If they want to get blessed, that's fine. How can I help them? And then I can be blessed through that. And you know what that settles? A whole lot of the garbage that's going on today. No matter what side of the aisle you're on. We don't need to try to eliminate and do all that. It's this thread. That's the application for us today. So maybe instead, I know this is way late, but maybe instead of seeking and fighting for the blessing, maybe we should just endeavor to bless others. And then see what God has in store for all of us.